Hello, and thank you all for joining us. Welcome to another Wine and Spirit Wholesalers of America Access webinar series. Today, our topic is craft, startup, and small production wine and spirits brand distribution and scalability. This is the second webinar in this series of virtual programming created to be a resource for craft brands. In fact, today, WSWA, on behalf of its almost 400 members nationwide, has launched the WSWA Access, a hub for craft, startup, and small production wines and spirits. This portal will house resources for craft brands to access and apply to their day-to-day businesses. We'll cover a wide array of topics, including what goes into a label, how to get your product into a restaurant, bar, or hotel, and what do you need to have in place before working with a wholesaler. This and other topics will equip craft brands with the tools needed to get to market. From videos to one-pagers to infographics, this resource-rich site is just a small part of the investment America's family-owned wholesalers have made into craft, startup, and small production wines and spirit development programs, helping to continue to advance the most diverse and smartly regulated marketplace in the world. The cornerstone of this initiative is its advisory council, made up of wholesaler advisors and leaders in some of the most exciting and promising craft, startup, and small production wine and spirit brands in the marketplace. I would like to thank this advisory council for the work they are about to begin, because their work will serve to assist both wholesalers and craft brands with staying connected on the hot button issues, both challenges and opportunities, and work to provide solutions and best practices. But the most important factor is to foster dialogue at a time when communication is critical. Wholesalers understand the hardship and challenges that access brands have been faced with this year, from on-premise tasting rooms being shut down to feeling disconnected from distribution. So there is no better time to develop and share information and other resources. Thank you to the craft, startup, and small production wines and spirits who have joined us today. There are several hundred of you here in attendance, and we appreciate you. With that said, let's get into the program and meet today's panelists. We are very excited to welcome back Cheryl Dersey, LibDib founder and CEO, along with Jimmy Sharp, head distiller and co-founder of John Emerald Distilling Company. We also have, for the first time, Ray Lombard, executive vice president, supplier management and business development at Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits, along with Michael Bender, president wholesale of Old Smoky, a craft brand that's being distributed by Southern throughout the US. I'm also told that Michael runs a first-class operating distillery that ranks as one of the best in-person sites to visit in the US. Looking forward to getting there as soon as I can. So thank you all for joining us. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's get into it. For craft brand managers, can you tell us a little bit about your product, when you started, what your product is, and really the heart of what we want to talk about today? What does scalability mean for your brand? Michael, can I start with you?
Yeah, certainly. First, let me thank you for having me today. It's really an honor to be included in such a group of distinguished colleagues and peers within the industry. So Old Smoky, if you don't know, the family's been making moonshine for about 150 years now, and we just celebrated our 10th year of actually doing it legally, and so we're very happy about that. But we are, we have, transitioned into being a craft distiller of moonshine and whiskey products, and our original concept was to really to create traditional East Tennessee moonshine and share that with folks that were coming to the Great Smoky Mountain National Park to enjoy the mountains and just the beautiful place that we have here in East Tennessee. And that original concept was in 2010, and it took off very, very quickly, driven primarily by obviously quality products, but also a significant tourist trade of people coming through East Tennessee. And so at this point, we've gone from having a small single distillery in Gatlinburg to having grown into having 4 distilleries in Tennessee, 3 in East Tennessee and 1 in Nashville. And if you would believe it, we actually we see almost 5 million visitors at our distilleries every year. And our original distillery in Gatlinburg that we call the Holler is actually the world's most visited distillery with about 2.4 million visitors on an annual basis. So we've gone pretty quickly from zero to scalability. And I was actually warned today by one of my wholesale partners that I better make sure that I mention that it's all because of them, which a good part of that is, by the way. But as far as scalability, what that really means to us as an organization, it's the ability to grow, to expand across the United States, to engage with more consumers, but doing it in a very planned way in a partnership with our wholesale network, and doing it in a way that doesn't jeopardize product quality or customer service. And that's been our biggest focus, especially the last few years, is how do you grow? How do you become as big as you want to become, but still make a great product and still be able to provide it to your wholesale network retailers and consumers?
Right. And that's a great conversation about scalability that I'm looking forward to getting into here this hour. Jimmy, let's go to you and tell us a little bit about John Emerald Distilling. You've got a great story. I can't wait to hear it.
Yeah, John Emerald Distilling, we're a craft distillery in Opelika, Alabama. We started about 7 years ago. My father and I founded the company together. Basically, I had a subcontracting company before this, and I was on the road all the time. I was home about a week out of every month. And when I found out my daughter was on the way, we decided we wanted to get off the road and not miss my children growing up. So that was sort of the catalyst to open the distillery. And since the family was the reason for the future of our family was the reason for the distillery, we kind of looked at the past of our family to name it and essentially theme it, I guess. And so John Emerald was the name of my grandfather. John Emerald Sharp was his full name. And each one of our products has a name of a different ancestor. And so that was sort of a method to keep us on the hook, to keep the quality where it needs to be. So if we're putting their names on the label, we better be honoring their spirits with the spirit. So that's the idea there. And we're the first legal distiller of whiskey and rums in Alabama since Prohibition. So we're proud to have that little bit of history under our belt. And most of our products everything we've entered in a contest has got at least one national medal under its belt, international medal under its belt now. So we're proud of that as well. We've been working just kind of slowly trying to grow our brand. Scalability is a challenge for somebody our scale. We're at about 8,000 cases a year right now. So it's still a very small craft distillery. They're certainly smaller, but a whole lot bigger. But so because most of our products are aged products that take 2 years or longer to create, that puts a pretty good lag on your scalability, and you have the cash flow you have, so we can lay down as much whiskey as we can, and then we can harvest it as often as we can and sell it. But we're always constantly trying to make more, so we're always looking for ways, and we work with LibDib on this a lot, and ways to move our distribution forward, but in a very small, scalable, manageable way, so that we can still, similar to what Michael was saying, so we can maintain our quality where we want it and not cut corners or anything like that. So, but still be able to open up markets in a very small way and grow, kind of penetrate in and then grow out, sort of.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like both of you have really talked about knowing what your niche is, really like who you are as a company, and that's been a big part of that concept that you think about when you go to scale. I'm looking forward to chatting now with Cheryl and Ray about the work that you do with craft, startup, and small production wines and spirits to help them achieve this 3-tier compliant scalability. So Ray, why don't you talk to us about your view on helping these brands scale up?
Definitely. Thank you, Michelle, and thank you everyone for having Southern Glacier organization here represented today. And the craft movement has opened the marketplace to a lot of phenomenal products over the years. There's more innovation now than ever before, and this is very good for the wine and spirit industry. Craft products bring energy, they bring excitement, and an increased level of consumer interest, something new to talk about. So it is very important, and consumers are demanding craft products, so our customers want to carry them. Therefore, we need and want craft spirits and wine products in our portfolio, so we continue to support and grow in the marketplace, not just with our supplier base, but also service our customer base. And to answer your question, as far as what we're looking for and what we do, it's quite an extensive process before Southern Glazers agrees to a product or to a portfolio. There's a lot of due diligence that goes in. We see it as a responsibility that if somebody's bringing us their brand, their baby, that we're going to have to help nurture it and raise it. So we look for three things. We look for a people experience, funding to invest, and in addition, that product needs to fit that niche. It needs to either stand out versus a competitive set or fit a niche. And we have a team focused specifically on evaluating the emerging brands. So we see it as a responsibility and a duty to go through this due diligence and before we make a selection. We, on average, get over 50 proposals a month, close to 200 a quarter. And we go through a whole vetting process. Usually about 15 or 20 of those products are the ones that make it to the final stage for decision making. And it's something that, we go through a lot of the extensive due diligence to make sure we can be successful. Suppliers, whenever they're interested, it's not just existing suppliers that are in the network, but we do have suppliers that come in via cold call via our sgws.com, or they email our new products at sgws.com and provide all their insights and information, product information, and we have somebody that is charged with servicing that entire portal.
So there is hope. If I send my product through on email or just on the website, there is hope that somebody's going to see it.
Yes, there definitely is hope that somebody's going to see it, because we do have resources specifically for that function in our organization. And then, in each of our key footprint markets, New York, California, Florida, and so forth, we also have artisanal wine and spirit or craft wine and spirit selling divisions run by an executive team with separate deployment, so that we can further nurture the business. And we also have 14 mixologists across the top 11 markets, which is where the bulk of the craft spirit products are being sold, dedicated just to developing, educating, and growing the brands within the footprint. So it's something that we're very proud of, along with the sales force. We have close to 12,000 sales feet on the street that are WSET certified, be it wine educators, sake educators, wine specialists, spirit specialists. So it's something that we pride ourselves on. We have the largest, best educated sales force in the industry.
That's great to hear. Before we move on to Cheryl to talk about LibDib, I want to get back to you, Ray, because Cheryl's got a much different business model. So to your very traditional business model, I know that many people that are watching are probably asking, all right, you've got 50 proposals that you're reviewing in any month. And in that, you said 15 to 20 are going to make it kind of to that next level. What is it that sets those 15 to 20 apart from the rest of the 50?
It's basically the brand offering, the product, the packaging, the plan.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a viable plan behind the brand, and looking for a supplier or somebody who knows what their aspiration is and who their target consumer is, and has an idea how they're going to make that connection.
That makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that. Great. I'm really excited, Cheryl, to talk to you. I know you've been a part of our webinars before, so I hope people are starting to be familiar with your version of a wholesaler and distributor, because it's really a wonderful, innovative opportunity for people. So can you tell us a little bit more about LibDib and what you have to offer for these access brands?
Sure. Well, I come from the supplier side of the world. So over the years, while I was working at my family's winery, I was noticing, consolidation in the industry was causing some challenges of just getting to market and getting to market efficiently. So utilizing technology, we built LibDib so that we are that 3-tier compliant distributor for any brand that wants it. So literally people can go online, sign up, and once the compliance pieces are put into place, they are available in a 3-tier marketplace for buyers in whatever state they're interested in. So we're currently operating in 6 states, and it really, for the craft and small brands, it's it's interesting because that's why I started the company. Was I said, hey, you have to have an opportunity to get to market before you can kind of prove yourself. But we've seen a lot of different applications over the years in terms of the mid-sized brands and even the larger brands who have innovation products. Things move really, really fast now. So when you want to get to market and you want to get to market quickly, this is a really good start for people, but then also to bring other products to market for people that have experience in the 3-tier world, we're a really good solution as well. So anyways, I'm really glad to be here and I'm really excited to be on the committee. So thank you for that. And I think that there's a lot of work to be done, but we've made some really great strides over the years and seen a lot of really interesting products get to market and get to the buyers and ultimately to the consumers that want them. We talked, all the, Southern, Ray was saying, oh, we have, 50 brands every month and we maybe talk to 15. Well, what happens to those other 35?
Right.
They can have that 3-tier distribution in over 30% of the market with us right now.
And I think one of the things that's going to be really interesting in the work we do with Access that we're trying to achieve is to help people understand how to find that fit. So I'd like us all to get into that conversation a little bit more too. And let's go back to Jimmy and Michael as you talk about finding that fit for the right wholesaler. So thinking back to your first distribution deal, what did you have in place? What existed for your company? And then what did you wish you had in place if you could start over again? So kind of what are the lessons you learned? So any of those stories about kind of how you were set up and how you wished you would have been set up, knowing what you know now, would be great. Jimmy, can we start with you?
Sure. We started about 6.5, 7 years ago when we first started releasing our products and whatnot. We're operating out of a control state in Alabama, so distribution was not an option. We had the state was our distributor, and it's kind of like having the DMV run your distribution process, so it's not fantastic, but it is what it is, and there's no way around it. But so we had a lot of time learning to navigate that, and so when we finally branched out of the state, we had our first foray into looking at distributors, and we made some pretty novice choices and things. We didn't know what we were looking for, what we we're doing, but we learned a lot. In some cases the hard way, but we knew what our brand was. We knew that we were high-end spirits. We're catering to the connoisseur of whiskey and rums, and we knew that, and we just had to. But how do we didn't know is how to get the right distributor to make that happen, and then how to get it into the right bars and the right package stores and whatnot. But
what do you think some of your novice mistakes were?
Well,
were you just too quick to want to sign up any distributor?
That was part of it. The first distributor we signed up with, and they're no longer in business, but I won't say their names. I don't want to be ugly to them. But they had an idea that they were new, and that we're new, you're new, and it all sounded really good on paper. They had kind of a strange idea how they were going to handle working the market with their reps, and they were going to double as just delivery guys. It was weird, but I didn't know what was weird or what wasn't weird. Honestly, I'd never done it before. So it all sounded good on paper, and quickly found out we didn't have a lot of access to them. They were so busy scrambling themselves to try to make things work that they didn't have time to deal with us. Also, what I noticed with them, and it's something that I will look for now, is if that distributor is constantly bringing in more and more brands all the time and overloading their sales reps. And that's one thing we like about LiveDib is that we're essentially the sales rep. So all that's taken out, the middle's taken out, and we can go directly to the customer and develop these great relationships at the right scale for us. Whereas sometimes it's easy for a small brand to get swallowed up by a portfolio and you're just ignored essentially. And even down to the boots on the ground, if they're just used to selling, brand X, they're not used to your brand, and their bosses won't give you access to them to ride with them and educate them on your brand. You're just kind of dead in the water. So just, if you can't have that relationship with your distributor, and have full access, it's a difficult road to haul at that point.
I put myself on mute because of stuff going on overhead, and I forget to come off. I need a mug. Cheryl, didn't you say you have a mug that says you're on mute? You need to do that for me. Michael, you had talked about the fact that you've been in this now for 10 years, legal, but you were doing this before. So what are we know you had something in place, but talk about what your startup looked like and what lessons you learned in that process.
Our first distribution deals were actually pretty easy for us. And I'm going to guess a lot of craft distillers find the same thing, is that, if you commit to winning at home and winning in your own backyard, that the distributors around your distillery will want to have your business. Because people are coming to your distillery and then they're going to liquor stores 10 miles away, asking the liquor store owner if they carry this Old Smoky product. And then the liquor store owner says, no, we don't. And then they start calling the distributors, and the distributors start calling me saying, hey, can we carry your product? And so that was really exciting early days. And so those first couple of deals were relatively fast to come. And then as we started to build scale with those folks and have, the impact of all the stuff we were doing locally, which by the way included having a local marketing team that was spending a lot of time interacting with consumers, interacting with retailers. We had, great feet on the street, and we were doing a lot of local event marketing. And so that made it, I don't say it made it easy, but it gave us an advantage when it came to scaling up within East Tennessee and then expanding out into Middle Tennessee and West Tennessee. And then all of a sudden, moonshine became very popular back in 2013. And then all of a sudden, we're getting calls from distributors all over the country because somebody came to the Old Smoky Distillery and tried our apple pie or tried our white lightning, and they went back to California or Oregon or New Mexico and did the same thing. They went to their liquor store to find it, couldn't find it. The liquor store calls the wholesaler. The wholesaler calls me and says, we want to carry your product. And, it feels like, oh, there's thousands of people asking for our product, but it might have just been one person. And so the thing that we didn't have in place that we needed as we scaled up outside of Tennessee is we didn't have the consumer demand. And the result was we picked up a lot of distribution in a lot of states, and we filled a lot of pipeline, which by the way feels really good when you're shipping full truckloads across the country, and you're 2 years old. But a lot of that product sat on the shelf for the next 3 years as we worked on building consumer demand. And so I tried to answer both of those questions. We were set up very well with consumer demand, with marketing, and with feet on the street locally, which benefited us. And the things that made us successful here, we didn't do in other states. And the result was that it became a challenge for us. And at one point in 2015, we actually kind of pulled back where our investments were and really focus on, our core business, which is, up and down the Appalachian corridor, which runs from Florida all the way up to New York. And so then we had to start over and start to build again by moving out state by state and making, the kind of investments that Ray was talking about, in media, in events, in social media, particularly now social media big time. And I think one of the most important elements was we had to invest in people to be on the street, working with the wholesaler, educating the wholesaler, and working with and building credibility with the retailers. And when we were able to do that, then all of a sudden we were able to get better distribution deals and grow scale with, world-class wholesale partners like Southern Glazers.
Right. So I'm hearing a theme that really knowing who you are, knowing what your brand is, and getting good at that seems to be a core lesson for both of you in your early startup, and what you wish you would double down on going forward. Which is really helpful. And I want Cheryl and Ray to kind of build on that. If we could talk about what do access brands need to do before they work with wholesalers and distributors? We've talked about, again, kind of knowing who you are, but let's talk more specifically about technology the level of sales and digital footprint. Michael just talked through, the social media aspect of it. So kind of what should that look like for these emerging brands before they begin to work with wholesalers? Ray, do you want to start?
Sure. Well, sgwsproof.com is the answer. It's a one-stop shop. It facilitates and takes a lot of the learning out of the process. So, craft distillers could focus on their product, and we could focus on the e-com platform. We have something that's turnkey, so it's available to all of our suppliers. It provides an industry-leading e-commerce B2B platform across 28 states. Licensed accounts can explore, learn, and order 24/7 through a simple click. I urge you to go to sjws.com and type in moonshine or type in pickles, and you'll see Michael's products come right up. If you're a licensed account and do that, you could actually get your pricing and place your order, which is the same exact pricing that a sales rep on the street will be quoting as well. All the deals would be found there as well. So it's very helpful, very intuitive. And in recent,
and that's a great, certainly a great sales pitch for what you have to offer. What about for any of those craft brands and people in the audience right now that are not signed up with Southern Glazer's Wine and Spirits? What advice would you have for them?
I would say, let's discuss what your brand proposition is. What's your plan? What's your strategy? That's very important. Followed by, what's the infrastructure and the scalability desire? Many times, there's overzealous scalability desires, and as you've heard from two very successful distillers, a planned phased approach has been a big part of their success, as Michael and Jimmy just spoke to earlier. So how scalable are you going to be? What are those thresholds or those points at which you'd like to be at, a year from now, 3 years from now, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
And then knowing who your target consumer is and how you're going to make that connection. We offer best in class, fast track to the shelf, to the back bar, but how do we come up with a plan to generate that awareness? And more, it's a digital approach. Liquid to lips during the current state of affairs has diminished. So, digital training, digital communication and connection has become how we sample these days.
Right, that makes sense. Cheryl, I know you spend a lot of time talking to the brands that sign up on LibDib, even though they really are so much in charge of getting their own product out there. LibDib really is often a partner in those conversations. And so tell us a little bit about the conversations you have with the brands that are on LibDib about what they need to do to scale.
Sure. So, our model's different. We don't have, sales reps out in the street. Like Jimmy said, our platform really is the ultimate sales tool in our marketplace. And then we enable our suppliers to be out in the market and working their customer relationships. So using technology, we're a little bit different in that aspect. We very similar to any other distribution situation. You really do need to know your product, have your packaging, have your brand story, what's your differentiator, and really make your LibDib page that, put that content in there and ensure that your buyers are seeing, what your value proposition is. I also, with my conversations with a lot of our suppliers, I say, hey, what's your plan? Where do you want to be? Do you just want to get to consumers through retail, or do you want to be on premise, or do you want to be just in 5 retailers in a state? I mean, that's how we started with Jimmy, and they had some restaurants in New York, family-owned restaurants that they wanted to get their product to. Sometimes it's that simple. You have a goal and a plan, and you start with that initial plan, and then it can just grow from there depending on how you want, what you want to do with your brand. So really just know what you want, have an idea of where you want to go, and start with account number 1, buyer number 1. And then once you get there, then you can grow from there.
That all makes a lot of sense. So I've got another question for Jimmy and Michael. Knowing the challenges that 3-tier compliant growth can look like, as well as some of those opportunities. We've touched on this a bit, but I'd like you to talk a little bit more about what your advice is for access brands and what they should look for in wholesalers. So maybe even relating it to why you chose the wholesaler that you're working with here today. So Michael, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, as far as what you need to do, or what my recommendation is probably a little bit different than what some other folks would do, because technology has completely changed the way that you can go to market. And I think that there's a lot of opportunities to, through, folks like LibDib and through the fourth tier, through e-commerce, to really use that as a springboard to create consumer demand that, we didn't have access to, 10 years ago. But if I was going to give advice to, to other brand managers, and trust me, I learn from them all the time as well. But is that you've got to commit to winning at home. If you have a distillery and you can't win in your own backyard, don't think for a second that you're going to win 2 states away, or halfway across the country. So you've got to commit to winning your own home state. And then once you've got a wholesale partner that will work with you and is really interested in growing your brand with you, take the time to plan your growth and work as a partnership, so that you can best maximize their resources and your resources. And that being said, do not just rely on your wholesaler to grow your brand. Because there are so many brands out there, and there's so many things that they have on their books, that their time is limited for that sales rep in the store. And by the way, plugging Proof for Southern Glazers, that's really freed up their salespeople to do a lot of extra selling, which I think we're all excited about. But you've got to make that commitment and those investments to get your people in front of retailers and riding with wholesalers and interacting with consumers. And then take that model, when you find the model that works well for you, and then scale it up state by state. Sometimes it's account by account or county by county, but don't get too far out over your skis, because you'll end up in the situation that we ended up with, where you end up having to claw those things back. And and the other thing that's really, really important is not only do you have to know who you are, but you have to know who your consumer is. Because you can throw a lot of money at people that don't want anything to do with your brand if you don't know who wants to drink your brand. And if you can identify those people, and there's lots of great ways to do that, then you can really target your investment. And social media is probably the most cost-effective method of reaching those people in a targeted way that can build that consumer demand that will allow you to scale up over time.
Do you handle your own social media?
I don't.
You, Old Smoky.
But as a company, we do have a social media team. We have a great marketing team that's in-house now, and they do work with some outside agencies to add that extra level of professionalism. But for the most part, we do ours in-house.
But I can understand if they're not letting you on the Instagram account, Michael.
Yeah, I can see that. It's all I can do to turn my computer on in the morning.
So that was wonderful. Jimmy, talk a little bit about your advice to people. And I think you've got a lot to offer to so much of our audience from your own experience, but talk about what they should be looking for in a wholesaler and how you view that partnership.
Right. I think one of the things to look for is, like I said, someone that's going to work with you, or in the case of LibDib, that has a platform where you're able to breach that work and do it yourself and get in there and make the connections you got to make. I think the industry is incredibly relational. I don't think that no amount of pandemic is going to erase that fact. And we can use technology to bridge some of that relation, I think, as what's happening right now. But that's something that's important, I think. But so even if you're talking about a traditional distributor situation, you just got to make sure that they're going to be, they're just going to work with you, and they're going to tell you, hey, we need you to do this instead of that, or and you can say, I need y'all to do this instead of this. So there's got to be some interaction, and then going, and then, but also I think that you got to go into it with most young distillers I've talked to that are about our scale or smaller. They are always just like hair on fire because their distributor didn't do this, their distributor didn't do that, and at the end of the day, they're expecting the distributor to do more than they've got in their head. That distributors do more than they do, and I think what was said earlier is that distributors do have a big portfolio and lots of products, and while you don't want to get completely swallowed out, so it's kind of a balance, but you got to also have to understand that you've got to go do the legwork and go out there and meet your customers. No rep can sell. Like I can go out and work the market. Hey, I'm Jimmy. I'm the distiller. I make this whiskey. That goes so much farther than any sales rep from a distributor saying, hey, we sell this whiskey, kind of thing.
Tell us about that, Jimmy. What do you do? How do you manage building those relationships so that you're getting to see the customer?
Right. For us, it's been a big growth over the last year and a half, 2 years. We have one full-time sales rep that works for us, and it doesn't have to be the distiller. It can be anyone, like somebody from like John Emerald Distilling Company in general. And so before I was balancing running the production side and out working the market. But when it was just me, I'd spend about 2 days a week working the market and three days a week producing and running my still and that kind of thing. But that's evolving where, but when I would go out, I'd basically just kind of just turning over every rock you can turn over. We would try to hit as many festivals as we can so we can actually get it in people's mouths and say, hey, because that's where we really did well. It's a young craft spirit. They hadn't heard of it yet. Does it taste good? Do I want to spend that price point on a bottle? I don't know if it's good or not. So anytime you can get it in the customer's mouth, in different states, there are different laws on that. We're very excited that Georgia has now loosened their laws, and going into 21, we can do wet tastings. Before a dry tasting is the most difficult. You're like, I promise it's really good. Check it out. Like, once you buy this, but when we could get it, but we always did really well. And we always saw upticks in sales and stuff, and just trying to all the balance in place. Like you're working this festival, make sure you've written, talked to the closest package stores and bars and say, hey, I'm about to promote the stew out of this coming up in a week or so. Can you make sure you got some stuff on the shelf? I'll send people your way. And then if that actually works out, the package store's happy, you're happy, and your distributor's happy, and just trying to look at it from all the angles and really put in the hard work. That's the end of the day. It's just put in the hard work.
Really smart. It's another theme that I think is developed in this conversation is you have to have a plan and work the plan. Every one of you, all four of you, have mentioned at some point in time about really knowing what your plan is and then going out working with that, even if it's a simple plan. Yeah.
And being ready to shift when you have to.
Well, and so that's an interesting, that's an interesting transition into our next question. I want to ask a team question. So for the two teams here, I'd love for you guys to talk about what you've accomplished together in 2020, which has been a year of shifting, and then how you're thinking about 2021. So Ray and Michael, do you want to go first?
Sure. So with Michael and his talented team, we have been able to swiftly program and fast track within the retail and chain business during these challenging times across all 41 markets where we represent Old Smoky, and all while expanding innovation. It's been a challenging time for innovation, and we've been able to do marvelous work with expanding not just the facings on the shelf and on the floor, but bringing in like the pickle product, which has become an overnight success for Old Smoky, and for ourselves, it's become a top-selling SKU. And we're not just resting on with those results. Over the past 6 months, we've been looking at many what-if scenarios and planning towards 21. We work closely with Michael and his team for the 21 approach. How are we going to keep our foot in the accelerator, just keep at the same pace and speed that we're at? We're very happy where we're at right now with our business, but looking at our new opportunities, and at the same time getting ready for some new innovation and some great stuff that Michael will speak to as well, that is exciting in the coming months.
Yeah, and I think Ray was reading all my notes again, because I think he covered a lot of it. But I think one of the things that is important about the relationship and the things that we get done together is the fact that we have scale with Raina's organization. I also have some other great non-Southern Glazers, wholesalers as well, and they know who they are, and I appreciate their hard work as well. But we've been working with Ray's team since July on the 2021 plan, and have already had to shift several things just based on the fact that the market's changing, the environment's changing.
Right.
And that's a good relationship to have. And just in 2020, one of the things that was really a win for us was we were able to pivot more resources away from on-premise, with on-premise restrictions being what they are, and realign those to the off-premise world. And the result has been significant growth in off-premise, but we've also been able to focus on some key on-premise folks. And I think Ray would agree that our on-premise business, although it's not growing, it's been resilient with the customers that we continue to work well with. And then Ray also mentioned innovation, and a big part of our business model is innovation and seasonal offerings, and being able to work and cover the vast majority of the U.S. with Southern Glazers gives us the ability to take a seasonal offering and launch it across the state, across the U.S. while limiting the number of call points we have to get that done. And so we've done that with some great things. And two recent things have been our salty caramel whiskey, which is now our number one selling whiskey item, and then our moonshine line has been with our moonshine pickles, which were an innovation item that are now our number one selling moonshine item. We wouldn't have been able to do those things without just fantastic support from all of our wholesalers across the country and internationally.
And pickles, who would have thunk it, right?
Yeah, who would have? I'm probably the only guy in Tennessee with a 30,000 square foot pickle factory.
So it's been fascinating to see where business develops, and that's really that constant conversation about what's moving and how do you take advantage of that. Jimmy and Cheryl, if we can talk with the two of you who have a really interesting relationship too, and kind of how you've made your plans in 2020 and what you're looking forward to in 2021.
Yeah, sure. I'll start. Look, like I said, when we started off with John Emerald, it was, a couple of restaurants into one state. And then it's really grown from there. They've, this year been included in a number of our different e-commerce programs, and been able to have that kind of consumer visibility through what we do together. So that's been a great development through 2020, considering, the unfortunate closures of a lot of on-premise accounts throughout the country. In terms of 2021, when we start seeing some things opening up again, one of the newer states that we launched right in the beginning of this year was Florida. That's right next to Alabama. So we want to, we're working with Jimmy and have put together a plan on how can we get some more buyer visibility towards their brand on the LibDib site, as well as, showing those products within the market to customers. So I think that's kind of the next step for them as they expand their reach. We're growing in some other states in that area as well, and that's our plan for 2021. So hopefully we can have that brand in that state and work with them, because they're a great family to work with. We really enjoy it.
Like Cheryl said, we started, the reason we got set up with LibDib in the first place was my brother and sister owned bars in Harlem and Peekskill, New York, and in Harlem in the city. And they wanted to have their family's distillery available. So but we weren't not anywhere near ready for distribution in New York City. So LibDib was a great fit to just kind of dip our toe in that market. And then we said, hey, let's try dipping our toe in California. And then it just kind of, we've got just slowly seen some developments, and then the e-commerce stuff, it just came out on just the right time for us. And right as COVID was hitting, we picked up, I think mainly was Flaviar did a lot with our bourbon, and it's that filled the gap and managed to allow us to grow as well at the same time, which was just couldn't have come at a better time. And then we're excited to hopefully maintain those chains and those sales and whatnot, and while also kind of recapturing more on-premise as it comes back.
Right. And I think you told me the other day when we were talking that your family's restaurants and bars in New York so far are faring all right.
They are, yeah. They're holding together. I mean, I think they're dealing with the shutting
Right.
down. Now they both have a fair amount of outdoor seating, so I think they're investing in a whole lot of umbrella heaters at the moment to
Right.
keep
Right.
the side warm enough to keep functioning. But
Right.
from everything we talk regularly, and they don't seem too downtrodden. They seem
That's
optimistic that they're having a duck and weave like everybody to.
Yep, that's good. Well, as you know, we're all worried about our on-premise retail partners as well as just the shift for so many of our off-premise partners. So great to hear when things are going well. I want to take the time now to open it up for questions because we've had a number that are coming in. All of you that are participating have done this many times before, and you know that the Q&A function is the best place to submit your questions. So any questions you want, please send into the Q&A. And we have Jake Hegman, who is with us always to help monitor that Q&A process. So Jake, what's been happening in the question world?
Well, let's start with Cheryl. Cheryl, you've had a number of questions come in about where LibDib might be expanding to, but also might be, and also could you expand on how your pricing and or markup system?
Sure. Sure. It's funny. Whenever we get a lot of questions, through our site and through our chat and whatnot, it's always like, where are you expanding to? And I want to be like, look, we're in like 30% of the country right now with our, even, because we have 4 of the big 5 states. So one of the things I always try to tell people if they're looking where to start, it's really good to start with, 4 of the big states, 4 or 5 of the big states in the country. But, my goal for the company is to expand into every market at some point. My long-term vision is that, any brand can sell to any buyer in any state, one case at a time, through the 3-tier system. So I think that over time is where we want to go. For next year, we have a lot of kind of the southern states on the brain. I would say Texas, Georgia, Louisiana are things that we're working on. We're working on New Jersey and Maryland, Arizona, Washington. So, it's hard to say when we will actually be operating in those states because, or any new states, because there's a lot of government things that happen in between when you're applying for a license and you're working on your warehousing and methods of compliant operations. So I can't give any time frames, but those are kind of the things that we're working on. In terms of our model and the pricing model, we work, our model is different than traditional distribution. We don't have our own trucks or warehouses, and we don't store massive amounts of inventory in warehouses across the country. It's kind of a just-in-time inventory fulfillment. We also don't have sales reps. I like to say that our platform is a really great sales rep because of the way we've built it. It showcases everything that a brand has to offer in terms of all your content, your sales sheets, your social media. You can really make a great presentation to an account through our platform. So I like to say that that's a sales rep, but we've also built a lot of tools to enable folks like Jimmy to go in the market and to work directly with their accounts and put in orders and have the retailers order directly through LibDib. Our pricing model is approximately 15% across all our states. Some it's up, some it's down. And we have, so it's a lot less than the traditional distribution model.
Great.
Does that make sense? Did I answer your question?
I think so. And just before we move on, we had a number of people ask, they are foreign producers. Can you talk just briefly about how they link with your company?
Yeah, so we work with a lot of importers. So we have to, legally we have to purchase from an importer because that's the licensee within the country. So first steps first is to get an importer. We have some great partners that we work with, that we'd be happy to refer you to, if you're at that stage in the game. But one thing I would really encourage all brands to do, just go to libdib.com and sign up. Like, it's that easy to go in there, get started. There's a ton of information in the platform. We have a really great help center that has educational videos and details about all of our pricing and shipping and how it works. So I think that's a really that's a really great place to start. Just go to libdib.com and you can have, there's a lot of referrals in there as well for different brokers and feet on the street programs, different, fourth tier e-commerce marketing programs. It's all right there.
Thanks for that. One question for the panel. It was mentioned earlier by Jimmy, but control states. Can the panel talk a little bit about the approach for control relative to working in the licensed states?
Sure. Southern Glacier has representation through our regional structure. We have a control state region, and we're the only distributor that can one-stop shop. You can one-stop shop with, and we service all the control states. Obviously, the business models by state vary drastically, and we do have a team of experts that can help not just with the actual sale, but also with data, insights, and support.
On the
Gotcha.
control states, and I can speak to Alabama and Mississippi specifically because we sell in both those states, but they both have a pretty stringent control. Alabama particularly because they control both the distribution and the retailing of spirits. So in both cases, you're not looking for a distributor, you're looking for a broker. And a lot of distributing companies function as brokers in those states and do what a distributor would do. The negative is that then you're sharing more of the pot with more people because it's still getting marked up by the state distribution systems, and then but you really can't do it without the broker. And that's one thing. We tried to do it without a broker for years in our home state, and it was just, if you don't have enough boots to go and look at every single shelf every day or every week at least, and because the people running the state stores just aren't invested in any way whatsoever. They're actually informed they cannot speak to this one's better than that one or whatever. They can't be salespeople in any way, and they just often don't. It's like I said before, it's like the DMV is running your distribution chain. So it's very frustrating and very hard to deal with. And you should know that going into distribution state, be ready to do a lot of extra work for a little less money, basically.
And I would add to that, I mean, you have to be a subject matter expert on all of the laws and the regulations and the timing of listing periods and such to be successful in the control states. And so you've either got to be the expert or you've got to find a broker that understands that. And that's going to vary state by state. But here's I think the good thing about control states, or one of the many good things, is they slow the process down and they keep you from outgrowing yourself and putting yourself into problem areas in within those states. Because it's very easy when you start to have some success to want to add SKUs and add sizes and add complexity operationally that you may not be able to handle. And so I mentioned earlier that we had a clawback at one point where we had to kind of come back to our home states. And the one place that we didn't see that softness in the business was within the control states, because the process itself kept us from overextending in those states. And I'll tell you, that's one of the things that really sold me on planned targeted growth versus getting drug around, holding the tiger by the tail. So, and also get used to dealing with government bureaucrats, which are a lot different than profit-driven family-owned wholesalers.
Yeah, and I'll add on to that. One of the things that Michael just mentioned was, get to know the laws and be an expert in that particular state. We're very lucky to be partnered with RNDC, on a national basis. And they're very strong in the control state. So we're working on a plan together to how we can be a player and get those small brand. I mean, it's the same thing in control states, especially at kind of these state-owned liquor stores. How do you get consumers these products that they want? And they have even a bigger challenge than a lot of kind of the, the independent retailers in non-control states. So it's definitely an interesting and it's definitely an interesting market, and I'm loving learning about it. And I think that there's going to be a lot of really great developments to come.
Just last bit of advice on that: ask questions, because every state's going to vary velocity, clusters, and some are more some states are more entrepreneurial than others, and some run it also as private enterprise, and others do have a little bit more of a governmental approach to it. So do ask questions and identify who the best broker partner is.
Ray, we had a question come in that I think might be for you, referring to craft brands that tend to skew to the on-premise in the early days. In this time where on-premise is very different than it was a year ago, what kind of advice would you give, for working in the current on-premise or alternatives to that today?
There's been great success with supplier partners we work with who have taken their on-premise personnel and their on-premise resources and pivoted it towards the retail segment. So that engagement, that brand education, and so forth, where it's available and limited face-to-face scenario, that's been quite helpful. Programming, revisiting programs. You have brands that might have been 45 to 70% on premise, and many have been able to identify pricing and programming to start gaining A, distribution, or B, it's spiking their volume in the retail channel. So, revisit all of your programming, revisit your pricing. Do you have 50 mLs? Do you have a size program that you could use, be it a 50 ml or 375, that you could use to stimulate that trial? Most importantly is all those mixologists, all those bartenders who you've worked so closely with through the years, engage them. They have social media platforms. They're online right now, holding their own platforms because they don't have people coming into the bar. So support them, have outreach with them, and the digital component has become more important than ever because that's how people are learning to entertain at home and how they're interacting socially. It's new happy hour.
Got it.
I think we have time for one more question, Jake.
Sure. I think this one goes for everybody. We've touched on it already, but there have been a few questions in about the role of e-commerce and helping, maybe it could be your top suggestions on how e-commerce can help connect brands to the consumer, whether through whatever platform that is. E-commerce hot takeaways.
So not just the B2B concept, but also the B2C concept, and we recently had an outset. So it's how do we start facilitating and providing expertise, imagery, and data and infrastructure support to customers all the way down to that channel, be it the Drizzly, the click and order channel. That's the next level of engagement that's very important, and it's something that most recently we have incorporated into our Proof platform, so that a customer setting up their delivery or their click and deliver platform, a lot of the content, a lot of the information is ready to go for them.
E-commerce is interesting and kind of new to me to a certain extent. And, there's a lot of buzz around direct to consumer e-commerce, which, you really can't do right now, within the three-tiered system. And so I know there's a lot of people pushing in that direction and going in that direction. But as we engage in e-commerce now, it's really important that you be three-tier compliant, because e-commerce will develop to be a giant business in the spirits industry But right now, at least for us, it's very small. And, the bulk of our volume is driven by our wholesale network. And, I want them to be a piece of the profit pool of everything that we sell. And, I think it's important that we protect those relationships as we, explore different e-commerce platforms.
Well, Michael, you're just singing music to my ears, of course, with all of that. But I know that we, and this is part of why we have these webinars, is that, we're going to continue to explore this through Access, is there are ways to handle that electronic relationship with the consumer in a 3-tier compliant way. And we're really happy and looking forward to do more of that with all of our Access partners.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Jimmy, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. So I was just going to say, when you think about brand building and how it's been done in the past, and you've said, oh, on premise, off premise, I really think there's something now to the e-premise. It's, how do you get your brand out to consumers? But then they're still going into a retailer, or it's being shipped compliantly through a retailer in whatever state to get that liquid to lips. That is, especially a lot of kind of our startup distilleries, that's a lot of what we tell them is that could be step one, is start working on your e-premise and get your liquid to lips of the consumers, and then start seeing where it takes off and building your distribution from there. I think that COVID has really accelerated this e-commerce activity. And I don't think it's going away. I think it's going to just continue. And I think it's a really great opportunity for a lot of people to share their stories.
Right. Excellent. Well, this has really been a fantastic hour that went so quickly. I want to say a special thank you to our platinum sponsor, Encompass Technologies. Encompass takes pride in working with more than 600 warehouses, hundreds of suppliers, and over 14,000 retailers across the globe to empower business operations and create a network of comprehensive solutions that benefit the industry as a whole. So please check out encompass8.com. Again, their website is encompass8.com. And a big thank you to Encompass for making today's webinar possible. I also really want to thank all of you who joined us today. This was really a fantastic discussion, and your questions made it even better. A recording of this webinar is available on WSWA's webinar page, as well as a link on WSWA Access. Remember, our hub for craft startup and small production wines and spirits microsite. This microsite, of course, is packed with tips, best practices, and suggested guidelines for getting to market. And I'm really looking forward to the work that we're going to do to continue to enhance WSWA Access. So everyone that is registered for today is going to receive a link to today's recording. I know that was a lot of questions that came through the chat. And WSWA wants to make sure that we're going to continue with a series of webinars throughout the year on various topics, and we hope that you continue to join us in these forums. Special thanks to the people that made it happen today, our panel, Jimmy, Michael, Cheryl, Ray. Thank you so much for spending this hour with us, and we hope you can join us in the future. So everyone, look for eVites in your inbox, and be sure to check out WSWA on social media and the weekly buzz for all of our WSWA members. Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.